This is your host, Dub FFG, with the Fantasy Football GOAT Strategies. How you doing today? Today, we're going to talk about Week 3. Let's get to it. First, as always, go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button because you know it helps our channel grow and it keeps the sponsors happy. So, hit that like, subscribe button. We really appreciate it. First up, recapping Week 2. Now, Week 2 had a number of things happen, so let's cover some of those. First, Saquon Barkley. Now, he suffered an ankle injury, which is not as bad as his past injuries, so he's only going to miss a little bit of time. He's probably going to miss Week 3 and maybe 1 or 2 other weeks if you want to get him back at 100%. So Saquon is just out for a small period of time. So if you have a backup, or if you were able to pick up Matt Prater, you should be good. Or if you were able to pick up Jerome Ford, that leads us to the Nick Chubb injury. Now, Nick Chubb suffered a horrific injury again for the second time on the same leg, the same knee. He's out for the season. The injury was caused by him already engaged with a defensive player trying to break a tackle, and the second defensive player, Minkah Fitzpatrick, hit him below the knees. Was it intentional? No. Was it a dirty play? No. It was simple a football play where Minkah came in and he didn't lead with his head. He threw his body into Nick Chubb, and unfortunately his body landed below Nick Chubb's knees. His foot got caught up on Fitzpatrick, and there the knee injury occurred. Again, it was very horrific. So on offense, that's why you have that penalty where two offensive linemen engage with one defensive player, where one goes high, one goes low. There's normally a penalty for that because the defensive player that's already engaged, he cannot protect himself. So unfortunately, this happened as Chubb was running, headed to the goal line. He was already engaged with a defensive player, so the second defensive player came and hit him below the knees. Again, not intentional, not a dirty play, simply a football play, and that's why no flag was thrown. It was, again, unfortunate. So we're wishing him the best, as well as Saquon Barkley and others that may have suffered some injuries this past week. The Chargers, they're 0-2. Somewhat surprisingly, but somewhat not, because they have, unfortunately, a recent history of getting in close games and losing them. So that trend is continuing thus far this season. They're 0-2. The Dallas defense, man, they're lethal. Well, you can only have good things to say about that defense because if you have them, you're sitting pretty. They're giving you a ton of fantasy points. They're so lethal, they probably need to be registered as a lethal weapon with the local law enforcement or even the national law enforcement, because the Dallas defense is aggressive. They have tons of confidence and they're playing with it. They're not even angry yet. Just imagining if they get angry and they play with that confidence and aggressiveness. Yeah, they're bad. Puka Nacua, he's still lighting it up. It's only week 2, but he's still lighting it up. 25 receptions, 266 yards, 0 touchdowns in 2 games. Now imagine if he had touchdowns with his receptions and his yardage. Man, he's definitely lighting it up. If you have him as well as Tutu, you should be sitting good because those guys are lighting it up out in LA, and somewhat surprising, somewhat not, because again, that's the ebb and flow of the league. There's always some guys that you don't expect that aren't big names that tend to light up the fantasy world. And those two happen to be on the same team and they're doing it. So if you have them, keep them in the game. Don't even question it. Our picks and must starts from last week, we sitting at 63%. That's 23% up from the week before. Now, that's good because we're moving forward toward more of where we normally be at 70% and higher. We still have a little bit of ways to go. 60% is much better than 40%. So keep them plugged, keep them played, keep it tuned in. Week 3. Yeah, these are the must starts, or the hot reads as we call them. So let's get right to it. Justin Herbert versus the Vikings, Jahmyr Gibbs versus the Falcons, Puka Nacua versus the Bengals, Tony Pollard versus the Cardinals, Kenneth Walker III versus the Panthers, Dak Prescott versus the Cardinals, Zay Flowers versus the Colts, Bijan Robinson versus the Lions, and the Ravens defense versus the Colts. These are your hot reads. These are the ones that we're expecting to get tons of points this week. So definitely keep them in your lineup. As for week 3 overall, you may have suffered major injuries with some of your players. Again, like the Barkley, the Chubb, even Burrow and Rodgers. If so, they may require major trades. So if you have either of those players, you're going to have to make adjustments. If you don't have the bench to fill those voids, you're definitely going to have to look for the waiver wire and the trades. Again, the lesser big names like the Nico Collins, the Tutu, and the Puka, they can help you out very much. Even Robert Woods, the wide receiver Reynolds up in Detroit, some of those guys can help you out. Again, right now we're in plug and play if you have suffered those injuries, and if you're in deeper leagues where you don't necessarily have a bench that's deep like that. 10-man leagues or less, you should have somebody on your bench that could fill in those voids, even at the QB position. Week 3 is really what you're looking at as a telltale. That tells you what you actually have on your team, whether it be bench, whether it be your studs, your normal lineup. Again, your studs, you know to always keep them in, but your adjustments are the most important. So keep that in mind as you set your lineups, because this week we're expecting the scores to be high. We're expecting high fantasy scores, tons of touchdowns. Don't be surprised if you're in a shootout with your opponent. This should be a week of high scoring. Be creative with your lineup. Again, Tutu, Puka, Nico Collins, Jordan Love, Jerome Ford. These are guys that can help you out if you're dealing with injury, or if you're just looking for someone just to put up some numbers that's not a big name, particularly in those flex positions. So week 3 is a creative one. Get creative, set your lineup, stay with your core, just make some slight adjustments. And this is going to tell you what you actually have. Again, this is Dub FFG, your fantasy football GOAT strategies. Till next time. Question: is your NFL team winning the Super Bowl this season? If so, then you better get your new gear for the new season. NFL Shop is providing with your new favorite team's apparel this season. Use the link below or scan the QR code to see a huge inventory of NFL teams apparel. Discount codes will be available throughout the season, so use the link. Shop now.